When I bet, I like getting something back, even if I lose. That's why I bet with Fanatic Sportsbook. When I bet with them, I earn fan cash, win or lose, and I can flip fan cash into bonus bets or use it for new Knicks apparel at Fanatics.com. Download the Fanatic Sportsbook app and let the fan cash flow. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Connecticut residents call 888-789-7777. Massachusetts residents call 800-327-5050. New York residents call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Maryland residents visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
Welcome to the Knicks Film School Postgame Show presented by Fanatic Sportsbooks. The Knicks are on the board in the Summer League, getting their first win against the Brooklyn Nets, 97-93, in a game I think will maybe ease some tension, ease some anxiety that's been brewing out in Knicks Twitter land and other areas regarding maybe a certain second-year point guard. This was a game that you come into it and listen, there was no Dadier. He had the foot contusion, so he didn't play. No McCullough. He had the nasal contusion. He didn't play. So you knew there was going to be an opportunity here for some other Knicks to have some shine. And the one player I think coming into this, not in terms of like their career, because I think Beauchamp is the one that needed this game to really boost himself to potentially have a pathway on an NBA roster. But Tyler Kolek really, I think, for the fan base more than him, kind of needed a nice game tonight. And just a game where he felt like he was in control of the action. In the first two games, it was so often where he seemed like he was not in control, that the defensive pressure was getting to him to the point that he was unable to just functionally run an offense. That was the most alarming aspect to the Tyler Kolek experience through the first two Summer League games. I was on these airwaves after the second one, speaking about the fact that Tyler Kolek seemed completely out of sorts based on a lot of the ball pressure that was being thrown at him. And it was concerning. And I was not at a point of writing off Tyler Kolek. I am still optimistic about him going forward, but for a second-year pro that was a 4-year senior that played a lot of minutes at a major school against great competition, that played meaningful minutes last season on an NBA roster, you would think for a second-year player that player would come out and show maybe that he's not quite too good for Summer League, but that he is one of the better players on the floor, and that was not the case through the first two games. That changed here tonight against the Nets, where in the first half, he was the best player on the floor. And we will right off the bat caveat this with the following. The Nets, they drafted 5 players, only 2 of them played of their first round picks. This was not a team littered with NBA potential, NBA talent. That is a real caveat to state right off the bat. But you got to give credit to Tyler Kolek, who came out, controlled the basketball, made shots, got into the paint, made several off the dribble threes, which has always been the one area coming out of Marquette. Even if you were bullish on the catch and shoot three, which I still am, the off the dribble stuff was to be determined until we saw it in an NBA environment. And he made a few of them today or tonight, which was very encouraging, but in general looked completely in control. And at times looked like he was toying with the Brooklyn Nets, looked like a player that was too good for Summer League. And the tide did change a bit in the second half. Now, a lot of that was the Nets came out, played a lot of blitz coverage, a lot of high coverage against him. He to his credit, got the ball out early. A lot of that was Ariel Hukporti in that third quarter, getting a lot of short roll reps, which I think is a great sign for him going forward in terms of getting the repetition of playing in that area where, again, when you play with Jalen Brunson, you're going to have a lot of opportunity playing in the short roll. I thought that was a great development aspect to this game for Ariel Hukporti. But in general, I like the processing from Kolek in the second half, just getting off it early, letting the Knicks play 4-on-3. I have felt like that led to a lot of Beauchamp scoring, who ended up with 25 points. The vast majority of that came in the second half. Again, Kolek, let's just give the line out. 25 points, took 12 threes, made 5 of them, 4 assists, 4 steals, got a ton of deflections, got a early offensive foul draw, I think on the first possession where he drew the foul, emphasized it, maybe didn't quite flop, but certainly made sure the referees were attentive to the action, drew in that early offensive foul, and then he got going. I thought his passing was on point for most of the game, made 2 or 3 live dribble, left-handed skip passes to the weak side corner. I don't think a Knicks player made a single one of those threes, but the process to create those actions was key as he's able to make reads off that pick and roll situation. Tom Crean on the broadcast, I thought, made a really good point. He made a few of them, and I'll get to some of the bigger picture points he made a little bit later. But early on, he was talking about the fact that the Knicks weren't setting screens for Kolek. And through the midpoint of the first quarter, through the rest of that first half, that changed. Hukporti, Najee when he was in the game, they set screens to allow Kolek to get some advantage, some separation. And then once Kolek is able to get to the middle of the floor and he's able to read where the tag is coming, he can make most of those passes, whether it's a lob, whether it's a corner skip, whether it's simply the pass to the opposite slot and letting the Knicks play with an advantage. He can make those plays. This felt like a game that had a little bit more structure. Maybe that was by design with the Knicks coaching staff trying to give him maybe a better opportunity here to show what he has. He was able to take advantage of some of that. And I just thought the shot making was fantastic. He had an early paint touch where he's playing off 2 feet. In the second game, I thought, and even the first game in Summer League, too often he was getting into the paint without playing off 2. So it was either going to be a jump pass or a shot at the basket. Tonight, he had a couple of occasions where he's playing off 2 feet and he's able to have pivots. He's able to get second cutters and find them. And he's able to pivot away and make shots. He made a one-legged fall away shot reminiscent of Jalen Brunson in the short painted area, short mid-range shot that I thought was a very effective shot for him based on a big coming over and able to gain a little bit of that separation. I thought that was key. Had that really fantastic Pinoy step where you're faking it up, getting the defense to bite, and then slow stepping a finish at the basket. Really had the full repertoire going, had 14 points, 2 assists, 3 steals, all in that first quarter. I thought the Knicks did a nice job of just getting him in opportunities where he's able to get advantages, even running him off zoom action where he's in the deep corner and then you run him off a pin down into a dribble handoff, create the advantage, and then make plays out of that. Kolek is going to be, if it's going to work for him, it's going to have to be some off-ball value. He's going to obviously be a primary on-ball creator, on-ball distributor, but he's going to have to make shots off the ball, which he did tonight, and he's going to have to make plays with the ball in his hands against a rotating and against a tilted defense. And I think if you look at Mike Brown's offense, you project it forward, and this is another point that Tom Crean made, which was, I thought, very salient, where he said the Knicks need to do a better job this year and going forward at getting the ball to the second side, creating rotations for Jalen Brunson, allow him to play against a rotating defense. And we saw that more in the 22-23 season and then the first half of 23-24 when Julius Randle was creating those advantages and the way that Brunson was able to play off that. Well, Tyler Kolek also has equity off the ball because he can be a very competent shooter going forward and can get into the middle of the paint and create advantages in that way. So I thought for Tyler Kolek, a very important game for him, build confidence. He again, while he played meaningful minutes last year, they were few and far between. He, despite a lot of success in terms of individual awards and production at Marquette, he's someone that I think is going to have to need to see production in the NBA in environments like this to maintain that confidence going forward. And I thought tonight was a great step forward for him. Assuming he's going to play in the next game, we'll see. We don't know if he's going to get shut down here, which happens at times when you have important players late in summer league. You just pull them after they have a nice night. I don't think it would be the worst thing for the Knicks to maybe do that with Kolek, letting him finish with this effort, this production, this performance, and have him sit on that for several weeks before training camp starts. But big time performance by him. And I think for the fan base in general, I'm part of it. I see it. I read it all. I interact with it. We all felt a lot of anxiety regarding this player that the Knicks traded up to get, that they gave the richest second round contract ever to. That, again, 4-year player, 24 years old. We all expected much more from him than what he showed in those first 2 games. He answered a lot of those questions, a lot of those concerns in this one. I think it's just for the fan base who's not going to have a marquee trade or free agent that we're going to really boost our feelings about this team. There's going to have to be some internal development to really round out this rotation, whether it's Kolek or Hukporti or Dadier or McCullough. I think the Knicks are going to need 1, if not 2 of those guys to really develop into viable rotation players playing NBA minutes, playing winning NBA minutes. And Kolek, I think, may have gotten that ball rolling a little bit for him. Just a nice night. I love the off the dribble shooting again. The catch and shoot 3 was there. The shallow dip 3 from the left corner I thought was really impressive, where instead of going through his full dip, he shallow dips it and still has the power to get that ball up, quicken the release a little bit. That shot looked good. And then on the defensive end, the 4 steals, the deflections, he's got quick hands, and he's never going to be a positive defensive player, but he does, when you see the game and you can have great spatial awareness on offense, typically that translates to the defensive end. And he's always going to be very limited in terms of the size and the strength and the overall athleticism. But if he can be in the right spots, his hands can create deflections, create steals. And then if he's the one creating those, often it's going to create opportunities on the other end. The hit-ahead passing was there again. The diagonal passing, creating opportunities for the Knicks. Even when they're not finishing these, when that's OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, the Knicks are going to benefit from Tyler Kolek's transition capabilities. It was a big key for Kolek last season in those limited minutes. I imagine, based on his skill set, that is going to translate going forward for him as a player. So nice night for Kolek. I'm sure there's going to be super chats and discussions about him as we move forward here, but nice night for him to turn the tide a little bit. And the other guy I want to just touch on, didn't play a ton of minutes, but Ariel Hukporti continues to just do solid big men stuff that just gives you confidence that you could put him in an NBA rotation tomorrow and he's going to be competent at worst. He's got certain skills that are maybe outlier skills that I'll get to in a moment, but just the ability to wall up at the rim consistently in the summer league has been, I think, of all the micro skills that we can talk about, his ability to go straight up with 2 hands, extend that standing reach, and just be a solidly framed 240, 250 pounds. When he does that, it's a lot for an offensive player to go through that and finish with any efficiency. And tonight he had 2 or 3 first quarter rim stops that were really impressive. Most of them were just his ability to just stay straight up and down, not go from A to B, stay vertical, and be a deterrent at the basket. He's never going to be a shot blocker that's in the Mitchell Robinson at his peak or Rudy Gobert. But I think in terms of rim protection, his size, his strength, and his technique, I think, can turn him into being an above average rim protector. And if you couple that with what he can do on the offensive end potentially, and we have to talk about that a little bit. He had, once again, some nice flashes in the short roll. He had one where he put the ball on the floor and you could see him where his progression as he's playing in that 4-on-3, his number one progression, the Knicks have clearly drilled this into him, is to look for the baseline cutter first. And if that's not there, then get it to the weak side slot or weak side wing for an open three. Those are the progressions he's trying to make. And he's not quite crisp enough with those to always capitalize on that advantage. There are times you could see the wheels turning, and often in the NBA, especially at the NBA level, those advantages deteriorate and they expire very quickly. So you have to be very fast with those progressions. But the fact that he is schooled enough to catch, look for that baseline cutter. He had one pass for an assist tonight. He's had a couple at Summer League. And if that's not there, look for the shooter in the weak side wing or slot. That's where it's really solid for him. And I think can get better as he gets more repetition. That's why I thought that third quarter where he was playing in the short roll so often because Kolek was having to deal with that high ball blitzing coverage. That was nice repetition for him. And then the floater, which was a skill that when I was doing the player review for Patreon over at the Knicks Film School Patreon, that was probably the one skill that jumped out for him that I didn't really put into proper context. Like he has really good touch in that short roll area in the paint outside the restricted area. And he had that drive today, not playing in a short roll, but playing with a live dribble, putting the ball on the floor, getting into the paint, and then hitting a floater, Isaiah Hartenstein-esque floater that looked really good. And it looks sustainable, and it looks like a shot that he can really develop going forward. And again, when you are playing with Jalen Brunson, I can't state this hard enough. When you play with Jalen Brunson, you are going to have to be good in the short roll. That is a big time requirement. Now, when you're Mitchell Robinson, that skill is just not at this stage at 27, 28 years old. We are not going to see that development. So that's where Jalen Brunson's going to have to change the way he likes to play. And the Knicks are going to struggle when teams blitz and play high ball coverage. And Mitchell Robinson is the one setting the screen. But that's nor here nor there. Hukporti can play out of the short roll. And that's where I think he is going to provide a lot of advantages for the Knicks. Just seems like he has really good touch in that zone. Can be a very aggressive two-hand dunk finisher, but is not a super explosive where he's consistently going to finish over with a dunk or a above the rim. He's going to have to finish below the rim enough to keep defenses honest, and his touch seems like it's good enough to where he can do that pretty consistently. So I thought him playing in the short roll was key, and he just had another solid night in the 13-14 minutes he played. So nice night for Hukporti. I think he's, of all the Knicks, probably has the cleanest pathway to minutes with the big club based on, Towns and obviously Mitchell Robinson's injury history. There's going to be opportunity for him this season, and he's just going to be an important player for the Knicks as a, third center, third big on this roster. All right. Next guy, probably my favorite Knicks so far the Summer League in terms of the novelty, in terms of just watching him play, is Mohamed Diarra, who again showed off a motor and an effort level that in the fourth quarter completely took over the game. Now he didn't start. He started the game, didn't start the second half, didn't play. I don't think the entire third quarter, came in very late. So once he did come in, he just was all over the floor, offensive rebounding, diving for loose balls, getting in defensive stances, guarding, putting ball pressure. He was everywhere. And that motor at 6'9", 7'4", 7'5" wingspan with the standing reach of most centers, like that, you start there, and that is a really good starting point for a NBA prospect. That's before we get into some of the more glamorous attributes, which is the ball handling, the passing. Some of those reads that he can make are just high level for a player considered to be on the raw side that you drafted late in the second round. So he starts the game. Let's just go through it. Did not start well. Gave up 3-4 straight line drives. Seemed to struggle a bit on the defensive end, staying in front of some of the Brooklyn Nets. Now, I know one of those were where he gets sort of beat, calls for a switch, Knicks don't communicate it, and it's a drive to the basket. Even you put that aside, didn't seem like he was containing the ball well. Now, if you're going to talk about things that he's going to have to sort of work on or adjust as he gets to the higher competition, I don't know if he's got the agility to continually put ball pressure on NBA caliber ball handlers, wings, guards, like he did like he's done in Europe and like he's done so far in Summer League. So I think if you have questions about him as a defender, that's where I think it's going to start. Like, how good are his feet? How elite is the agility? Now, he can make up for it with the wingspan and the reach, but I think the blow-bys, which I saw a little bit on tape just doing prep after he was drafted, are probably, there's too many of them for an NBA coach to tolerate at this point. So it's either going to have to be better in that area, getting a little quicker, having better technique, or just tamping down on the ball pressure a little bit as he progresses through levels here as a pro. But just putting that aside for a moment, like, he had the one finish in the right corner, catch, jab left, baseline drive, and then the finish where he's the adjustment and then the reach to finish around a defender with the right hand. I thought that was a very impressive drive and finish for him. He's had a few drives in Summer League so far that are, for a player of his size, it's pretty striking. And you don't see typically a legitimate 6'8", 6'9" player with his strength and his athleticism to have those bursts, and especially a player that you're getting late in the second round. So it was another game for him that just shows that the Knicks may have something, quite special considering where they drafted him. It was to the point where Tom Crean mentioned that he was, as one of the more intriguing players that he's seen so far in Summer League, which I thought, coming from him, who's seen a lot of Summer League basketball so far, was a pretty high compliment for a player that is, no one is going to consider to play real minutes for the Knicks roster, but I think is a real prospect for the Knicks going forward. And he just, every time you see him play, he just tends to stand out. Even had a lob finish on a baseline dunk on the Tyler Kolek lob. So just to see him get off the ground, finish with two hands, was nice. Playing out of the dunker spot. We know the ball pressure, the ability to defend is going to be there. When in the fourth quarter, he's in the gap as a defender and he's showing his length and he's extending and he's showing all that 7'5", 7'4" wingspan. It's a lot to handle. And if you're a guard and you are looking to your strong hand, which is to the right, and you see a Dioubate in there and he's showing all that length, that is going to deter you from driving into that spot. And that is just like something he talked about when he was before he was drafted. Like, when he comes to the NBA, he's going to have to defend. He has really good self-awareness of what is going to make him an NBA pro. We know the flashes with the ball handling and the passing, and I think the shot actually looks good despite it not going in that often here in Summer League. I think it looks good. It's not broken. But defense is where it's going to have to come from. And, I don't know necessarily what position he's going to be best defending. Like, right now, he's probably best in an NBA setting against like big wings, maybe some centers in terms of where he is guarding the basketball. But I can see him, as he improves technique, as he gets a little more with an NBA fitness program, gets a little quicker, side to side. You could see him guarding 2 through 5 pretty consistently. And we know the motor is going to be there. We know the offensive rebounding is going to be there. So those are the things I think that he can do that are pretty, that are going to translate. And the question for him is obviously the swing skills, the jump shot. Now, you can look at it in just the results, and the results have not been great here at Summer League to start. But if you watch it from the free throw line, I feel like it's a very repeatable form. There's not a lot of wasted movements. It's not quite a clean one motion shot, but there's not a distinct pause as he gets into the second motion. Like, it's a pretty smooth looking jumper. And even when he takes his threes, it doesn't look like it is out of his range. It looks like a clean look. And even when you're watching tape of him before the Knicks drafted him, I felt like that was a lot of the same things I was seeing there, where the shot doesn't go in that often, but it looks good when he takes it. I feel like if you at this stage of his career at 20 years old, probably a year, 2 years away, potentially, I think there's going to be a chance for him going forward to develop a competent 3-point shot, which if he can do that, then you really could be looking at a real rotation piece. If the shot never really develops, never comes around, then you're going to have to talk about like, what is the equity as a small ball five, as a five, maybe not quite full time, but as the primary position as he fills out. Because you look at some of the athletic or the measurements, like he's basically the same size as Isaiah Stewart in terms of the length and the standing reach. You look at him standing next to Ariel Hukporti, and there's really no difference in terms of the height and the wingspan. Obviously, would have to fill out considerably to do that. I don't think that is the goal going as we go forward here. I don't think you want him filling out and getting physically more developed beyond what is going to take away from some of the athleticism. But if the shot doesn't come around, I still think there's a pathway, because you look at him as a grab and go weapon, potentially playing the five, then it can get you can talk yourself into that being a potential NBA rotation player. But the shot is the thing to track as we look for him going forward here. Gets into the G League action, tracking the free throw percentage, because he only shot, I think, 50% from the free throw line last year. Like, where is that in terms of the percentage? And then how does a 3-point shot look? Can he get it to the low 30s? And can he be mid 30s on the catch and shoot? And then you can really develop that and just keep stacking development on that. And by 22, 23, we could be looking at a very competent 3-point shooter. And then obviously I think the ball handling and the passing, which are real skills like today, could continue to develop. And then you have a real NBA rotation player on your hands. Right now, I think it's a very exciting draft pick right now that the Knicks have on their hands. And I'm just really excited about him going forward as a potential NBA player here. All right. MarJon Beauchamp, listen, he needed this game. He needed this one in the worst way. And who knows about what his role is going forward as a member of the New York Knicks. But I mentioned this after the second game. I felt bad for him as a person, as a human being, based on, the importance of this. And he was pressing, especially that second one where just nothing was falling for him, despite good looks. And that was more of the same in the first half tonight against the Nets. But I just felt bad that the performance and the production wasn't there for him, because he's fighting for his NBA career at this point. So based on that, really happy that he was able to have a second half where he was able to dominate the game at points, scoring the basketball. A lot of that was against a tilted defense, because the Nets were putting 2 on the ball against to try to slow Kolek down. But to Beauchamp's credit, he took advantage of that, was able to get into the paint, was able to make plays, was able to finish, and he looked like a player that was drafted in the late lottery, looked like a player that had played real minutes for a good basketball team in Milwaukee, and just looked like a guy that you can project to be in an NBA rotation going forward. Still, in his mid-20s, I don't know about, defensively, is there enough there? Is there enough shooting to really carve out a role on a good team? Like, I'm very skeptical of that, but for him, he's got to feel good about this performance. And that's in that second half, scored 25 points overall. And just to go into the fourth game, feeling good about himself and listen, this is all about, for most of these guys, 75% of the players playing in these games are just trying to fight their way on an NBA roster, trying to figure out a way to get NBA minutes. And A lot of them take different ways, whether it's, a career, multiple years in Europe coming over. Maybe you were a draft pick in the second round. Maybe you were a second draft kind of guy in Beauchamp. Like, there are many different avenues. Drew Timme. There are a lot of guys here trying to figure out if they can play in the NBA. And Beauchamp and Timme, was very interesting that those two guys sort of went back and forth in the second half based on, older players for Summer League, at least, and for different reasons, decorated college player and a, relatively, high draft pick. Both players probably are needing games like this to continue to try to live the dream, which for a lot of these Summer League athletes, that's what this is. For Tyler Kolek, he knows that, his standing with the Knicks is not necessarily on the line here. Whether his minutes for this team is potentially on the line, but the Knicks aren't going to cut him tomorrow. Become Dadier is, he's clear in terms of like just staying within the organization, but that is not the case for most of the players. And Beauchamp is one of them. So really cool to see him go off a little bit, develop maybe some rhythm going forward to finish out the Summer League on a positive note. Last guy I want to just touch on hasn't done a lot of great things. But Dink Pate, listen, I don't know what's there in terms of the player, and we have not seen a ton of minutes for anyone, I think, to have a great opinion. If you didn't, because I didn't watch any of his, G League Ignite stuff or anything high school wise. So I'm coming at this very blind in terms of the evaluation process. But I thought his second half minutes were actually pretty good. He had a stretch in the third quarter where blew up a possession with ball pressure, had an offensive rebound, had a catch and shoot three. I think it's his second catch and shoot three from the corners in the Summer League. The shot is very busy. It's a high release point. He kind of brings it from his left shoulder a little bit above his head. Like, you're going to have to smooth that out if you're going to have a repeatable shooting motion going forward. It's just not, you can't go, he doesn't have the touch from my at least early evaluation to shoot the way he shoots and be consistent with it. So that we've seen many players come into the league, a young player, and maybe not completely redo the jumper. And I'm not saying he has to completely redo it, but there's going to have to be a significant smoothing out of his shooting form to develop at least competency from the catch and shoot. But, doesn't seem like a great athlete in terms of run jump, but for his size and length, which are above average for a wing, seems to be a really good, smooth, kind of gets to where he wants to go, and maybe not the most explosive way, but seems to always be where he needs to be. And, one of those guys that looks sort of effortless in terms of his athleticism, and you never know quite how to judge that, because there's going to be times for players like him where you're going to need to be explosive, and you wonder if that's going to be there. Like, how much of a above the rim player in short quarters can he be? I don't know. And the strength seems like he got bumped off. He had one possession where he's really into the basketball and there's a screen and he tries to get skinny through it, and he just gets hit a little bit and it completely knocked him off the pathway, creating a wide swath of separation between him and the ball handler that he was guarding. So he had done everything perfectly up until the point of getting through the contact, and then he was completely moved out of the way and wasn't able to stay within the play, gave up an advantage on that end. So the strength is going to have to be better for him. But there were some flashes here tonight that, are positive. And for a player that's not getting a ton of opportunity because of where he is on the pecking order, at least right now, to have a few moments where he's able to show at least something to either work on or to build on as he goes into his, potential Knicks developmental career, I think is a positive sign. Again, no idea what he is as a prospect yet. I don't think anyone, if they're being fair, has any idea about Pate as a prospect. But in terms of tonight in the third quarter, nice moments here to maybe show that there's something there to be positive about. All right, so those are the players I wanted to touch on. Before we get, I think we may have like one super chat that we'll get to before we wrap up, but there is one kind of big picture thing that I wanted to mention. And, there's a lot of talk about what Mike Brown is going to do for this offense and the changes that he's going to have to maybe enhance, optimize, maximize, whatever the buzzword you want to use, this basketball team. Well, I'd mentioned Tom Crean a few times. He was on the call on the broadcast. He went out of his way 2-3 times to talk about the need for Jalen Brunson to play off the ball more, the need for Jalen Brunson to utilize the hit-ahead pass more, which is, a pass that, for example, Tyler Kolek is really good at, or Tyrese Halliburton is the best in the world at, to get the ball moving up the court and in a much more efficient manner to get early shots in the shot clock. He also mentioned the Knicks having too often, how do you refer to it as, get away from one action, one shot possessions, which if you're observer of this Knicks team, especially this past year and especially in the post-Julius year in 23-24, that was often the case where, and even with Julius as well, like the Knicks never really were a team that would consistently get the ball to the second side, have a secondary action occurring on the weak side while your primary action is occurring on the strong side. And those are things that Mike Brown is going to excel at. At least that's what he excelled at in Sacramento. And I just found it very interesting that Tom Crean several times mentioned that. And he did state a few times how much he respects Jalen Brunson, how much he loves Jalen Brunson as a player. But it seemed like he was stating that so he can critique Jalen Brunson, the player. And when Tom Crean is saying this on the airwaves, I'm going to listen to it. And I think if there's any player that is going to have potentially the biggest adjustment with Mike Brown coming on board, it is probably Jalen Brunson. And to Tom Crean's point, if Jalen Brunson can have more opportunities playing against a closeout, clean catch and shoot opportunities, playing against a rotation, that is going to make Jalen Brunson maybe not score as many points, but more efficient and more sustainable for an entire 70-game regular season, however many he plays, and a long postseason run. So I just thought that was, for Tom Crean to say that, I think that was a pretty not only on point statement to make, but because you typically don't get coaches speaking in that way, or analysts speaking in that way. That's not criticizing the player, but being really clear and open about what that star player, a guy that's made multiple all NBA teams, needs to do to get better. And I think he's right about it. I think Mike Brown is going to do a good job of potentially enhancing Jalen Brunson, and I'm certainly looking forward to seeing it happen. All right. On that note, I think we have a super chat in the docket. It is from Drew P839. Thoughts on 5-out being statistically poor with JB? Well, the 5-out stuff was actually another talking point that Tom Crean mentioned, where a lot of times playing 4 out, 1 in, and playing 1 at the dunker spot, especially if that is a guard, can be actually more advantageous, provide more space than a traditional 5-out. I don't think, as someone that is not a live or die 5-out is the only way to play type person, I don't think we've seen enough sample size to know if Jalen Brunson playing in that environment is going to be good or bad. I think it would be very hard for me to imagine it not being good. If you can play maybe not quite how the Kings played, because Sabonis is such a unique player with his ball handling and with his passing and quick decision making, But if you can play a semblance of how the Kings played, and you can allow Jalen Brunson to play not only in a 5-out, but to be able to run into some catches, play off DHO a lot more. Again, I mentioned playing against a tilted defense on the second side. If that happens more often, I don't understand how that wouldn't make this offense pretty unguardable. If Karl Anthony Towns, as the 5 in the 5-out, can be good enough in terms of the decision making as the hub of the offense, if that is how Mike Brown chooses to go about doing this. And that is without any knowledge, any reporting, that's my guess in terms of how I think Mike Brown is going to play this. And, it's probably the best use of the talent on this team. And we can debate regarding, Tom Thibodeau and his ability to maximize this team. But I do think Mike Brown, if you're going to deploy 5-out and use Jalen Brunson, that should make him better. The key is going to be, can Karl Towns handle the ball well enough? Can he make quick decisions well enough? Those are the things that are open questions. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that, because we've never really seen Towns play. We've seen him play 5-out, but not with a system designed to utilize like the full wide ranging skill set that he has, the shooting, the passing, the drive. If you remember, like Sabonis playing through the elbow with 5-out, not only is that difficult to manage with the cutting and all the action split cuts you get off that, but Sabonis and 5-out at the elbow is a insane drive and post-up threat. So even if you have a team playing, a wing on Cat, if you isolate him at the elbow, you have many options. You can shoot over the top. You could put the ball on the floor to your strong hand, and you can turn that into like a post up, and then you can create and work off that. So there's so many more options you can get if you play that offense with Cat as the hub playing at the elbow. You're not going to get the full Sabonis experience and the grab and go and the ball handling and passing off the dribble, off the drive. But if you could do 70% of it, 60% of it, and then you add on the deep shooting ability of Towns, I think the same level post-up game, and just the overall drive game that Towns has, that's the thing that could really pop as a Knick, with Mike Brown sort of orchestrating this offense around him. And that's not to say that they're deprioritizing Jalen Brunson. It's more, we are going to now try to put Jalen Brunson in better, cleaner, less grinding possessions. And there's going to be times where late in games it's going to have to be Jalen Brunson ISOing or Jalen Brunson high ball screen 1-5 and just, make a play. That's going to be how many games are going to end if they're close. But in quarters 1 through 3.5, it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that's where Mike Brown can certainly do a good job. And we'll see sooner than later if it's what's he going to do in terms of the offensive scheme and the concepts, and how effective it might be. So we'll see on that. Thank you, Drew P. And thank you for everyone tuning in to the KFS Postgame Show presented by Fanatic Sportsbooks. Thank you for tuning in. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, leave a 5-star rating wherever you are listening to this episode. If you want to give me a follow, I'll have more video and thoughts on this game and Summer League in general at DJ Ace NBA over at Twitter. Thank you, Mark, on the 1s and 2s for hanging out with me. Thank you for everyone that watched this game. We are hardcore fans, and we are in it because that's who we are. And I had a fun time watching it. I hope you guys did, and hope you guys had fun listening and watching this. We'll talk to you soon. Hope everyone's having a great night. Peace out.